Welcome back to the Blindsiders. We're here to talk about the finale of Survivor 48. Our brand new winner, Kyle Fraser, and I think that we're not that surprised. I think by most of what happened in the finale. I think we predicted most of it, but there's some stuff in there that we can talk about for sure. Dylan, I guess what is your first big picture takeaway from this finale?
Relief. I'm relieved it's over. I think obviously it's been a very tumultuous kind of couple weeks here. Season 48 took a big decline post merge. That's been no secret to everybody. And it really I don't know. I'm just happy it's done. I really am. I really don't have much to say overall. I think the big picture moving forward is definitely where I have kind of more to talk about. And I also think the inevitable that we'll get into discussing what the downfall of the season is kind of more my speed. I'm happy it's over. I'm happy Kyle won. I'm happy that Kyle and Camilla kind of played out, seemingly as long as they could have. I do wish they would have went to Final Tribal together, but I'm happy Kyle won. I think Kyle's a good winner. He's not better than D. I think when you're looking at new era winners, I probably put him ahead of Rachel, even though I feel like a lot of people would disagree with that. And I think that potentially, we'll see how Rachel does on 50 if she's on it. I think Kyle's a good winner on a bad season. I think that's my biggest takeaway. I'm glad it's done. I think Kyle was a good winner on a bad season.
Yeah. That's actually interesting. I'm glad we have something to talk about because I think that Kyle's better than D. I think Kyle's the best winner of the new era. Well, we can get into that for sure. Brian, what about you?
Oh man, I guess I haven't really thought about. I tried not to right after season be like how good, because I feel like I can get a little caught up in the moment with stuff. I don't want to do it, but I will say Kyle is a great winner, and I do expect he'll be in one or the top 2 slots when I have a little bit of time to kind of digest the season. It all obviously, like, we were pretty confident that Kyle was going to win for a while now. So a little bit of like last night was like, could Camilla pull it off or not? And, once she didn't, once the final 3, I was like, there's no way Kyle's not going to win this. But then there were 2 Eva votes, and I was like, maybe I'm wrong. But no, happy for Kyle. I thought he was a really good winner, but like Dylan said, I wasn't super high on the season. I do wonder if on a rewatch if it will be any better, but it did feel like just like a steamroll a little bit, which is not super fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can get through that, but for me, there was never like a point where I was like, oh, there could be Eva, even when the 2 votes came out. For me, it was like, this is 6-1-1 Kyle. And when the second Eva vote came out, I was like, oh wow, Eva got a second vote. That's crazy. Star must have also thrown her a vote, and it's going to be 5-2-1. It did not I did not even skip a beat thinking that it was going to be close. And yeah, I think it does say something. We have been wrong in the past in certain instances on this podcast, but
us? No.
Yeah. I have had historically bad winner picks. I had a decent one this time, but I think that something that we can put our stamp on is we've been on the Kyle wins, Joe is the final tribal council loser train for like at least a month now. Like 4 or 5 episodes in the past, you can go back and find us on this podcast talking about Kyle, maybe Camilla as the winner, and how Joe is being set up as a loser of the final tribal.
Yeah, the second I saw David's face on the jury, I was like, oh yeah, Joe's losing.
Yeah.
I think it's and I think Joe is probably the most interesting candidate to come back from 50 for me. See him play without Eva. I do think Joe is a good player that was shrouded a little bit this season. I think that Joe 2.0 seems like he would learn a lot from his mistakes this year. I think especially with that final tribal, I think realizing that people who you really made no efforts to make relationships with And the people that you had relationships that you burned aren't going to just vote for you because you were a challenge beast. And I think that that's pretty clear. I have Joe a little bit higher. I'm pretty upset Joe didn't get second place. I think it was kind of the story all of Eva kind of being that, and the Discord around Eva today on social media is very interesting because naturally there's two sides that are saying Eva didn't ask to be like this charity case, and she didn't play into it. Where I disagree with that she didn't play into it. And I think on the other side, people saying, I think the autism girl got too much screen time. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think, Eva playing was, courageous to get out there on national TV, knowing your autism was going to be something that came up. And I think it's great to speak on it. But at the same time, I still think it ruined the game. I think it ruined the game for Joe. But I think that was his own fault. It's not Eva's fault. None of it is really Eva's fault, but I also just I never bought that Eva was a good player. I think that there was a lot of talk that Eva was a great player. And, Jeff talked about in this episode that, Eva really went through it. She had such a hard time in Survivor. But if you go back and look at it, Eva had one of the easiest stays in Modern Survivor between the food she got. The alliance, she does deserve credit for getting on. I don't even want to say latching on to Joe, for taking in Joe as an ally very, very early on and using that to her advantage. Even if Joe was kind of like the driving force behind that, she deserves a lot of credit there. But I think that Eva, I don't know. I think that Eva was a mediocre to so-so player that was quote unquote a challenge beast, even though that we never really saw that. She was definitely in some of these competitions with some of the guys, which that's, she's definitely way more athletic than I am. So I'm not trying to say that, but Eva is a player I would be very happy to never see play again. And I don't know if that's mean or insensitive. It's not intended to be. She is someone that I do think was part of the overall issue with this season that ruined it. And I am pretty upset that she got second place over Joe. I think that sucked, but I also think a lot of it was self-inflicted by Joe, which is obviously his own fault.
Yeah, I think it was tough because the added element of her having autism really did seem like players didn't treat her in the same way they might treat other players, which is not Eva's fault, like you said, Dylan, but it is kind of an unfortunate byproduct of Eva being out there. I do think if there is someone who, has a disability out there, you kind of owe it to them to treat them as a normal player. But I can also imagine that being hard. Don't be like Nyanka and threaten to throw someone's prosthetic leg into the ocean. But, also they're out there, they signed up for it. Production feels like they can play. These feel like that they can play, then you have to treat it like they can play the same as anybody else,
It's definitely not an anti-inclusion thing with Eva, because I have a daughter that's disabled and I want her to be able to do as much as she possibly can and be involved in everything. But I think when you're looking at a game like Survivor, I think that once again, so Eva, this is not Eva's fault. That's the key thing. And I think it was disgusting at the end of the episode. The first thing we saw was a promo for the Emmys for Survivor. And the two things they showed was Eva's situation and Mitch. It was it was a typical, hey, look at us. Look how great we are. We allowed these people on this season. We treated them just like real people. I thought that was pathetic. I think this season's a big red mark on Survivor, on recent Survivor. I really do. I think a lot of the negativity goes to Jeff specifically. I think production, definitely the people that are editing, I think, they're working with what they can. I think a lot of those, I would say probably more producers than Jeff, but put it like that. I think more producers than Jeff. I think this is a very, very bad season for them. Yeah. And I think the cast is catching a lot of slack for it. I think that it's better than 41, but I think it was worse than 43. Is that the season Gabler won? I think it was better than 41 and worse than 43. I think that's where I put this season. And much like 41, I don't know if I'll ever watch this season again, honestly. Like 41 was a planned skip for me when we get back there. I add this there to that too. But I think Jeff in production, this is a big red mark for them when they were on the up and up recently. And I don't think you can blame the cast for that. I think you look at the situation that they enabled pre-merge with the tribes and the way that they shuffled things up, the way that they introduced people going to the island, to Castaway Island and all that stuff. Like that's on them completely. And it's something we've talked about for many seasons. And that's a lot of my issues with this season too, outside of like Eva, outside of this being the worst Jerry, in my opinion, of all time, in terms of like skill in the game. I think it's a lot of it goes back to things that we've been telling them to change now for 5 years since COVID, since New Era has started, and they still want to keep doing these things. And I think that's a product of the end game we got post merge. I really do.
Yeah, I don't think the season was like horrible. Like there were seasons of Survivor. Maybe that's like me kind of like being too easy on it, but like for me, it was just kind of boring. Like I just kind of became apathetic towards it for like the last like month and a half, because like after the beyond the David boot, the way that the season kind of played out was very predictable, and like not like predictable in a way where it was like telling like a really compelling story, and like I was along for the ride, and like even though I saw the ending of the story coming, like it was really engaging. It was just like a very bland story, and I don't know how that could have been fixed, really, because I think a lot of that just comes down to the fact that this specific set of players that made the merge, not necessarily on the season in total, because I think there were players who got eliminated pre-merge, like a Thomas, a Bianca, even like a Justin, or
Kevin,
like a Kevin. Yeah,
justice
like
for Kevin.
Yeah, like these are Say, obviously, if you count Say as being pre-merged, even though she made the merge, she's pre-jury. Like these players, I think, would have made this kind of back half more interesting. So I don't think it was like an overarching casting issue. It was more of the fact that like a lot of these more compelling strategic players kind of got sniped out early, either through their own game mistakes or through unlucky game mechanics that were forced upon them, i.e. losing their votes for no reason. And that kind of left us with a crop of players that were either that kind of made it towards the end of the game accidentally. like Mitch wasn't really like in a position to ever go home up until like final 8. Not because he was good at Survivor, but because of just like the happenstance circumstances of the game. Whereas like in 80 to 90% of seasons, Mitch is probably out within like the first 3 or 4 rounds. So like a player like him just happening to make it deep into the season because of the way that things played out randomly is, I think, a contributing factor to that. And I think that combined with this idea of we have to play an honorable game that came from like these like people who are recent fans of the game, or like kind of like even people even Joe were like fans of Survivor via other vehicles. Like Eva was a recent fan who got converted by like some friends in like the last year or two. Joe didn't really watch the show, but he knew of the show because his late sister, is a big fan. So like people who like had a comprehension of Survivor, but saw it through a lens of like, it's a competition show about winning challenges, as opposed to like, it's a strategy show about deception and social maneuvering. And I think that all kind of mixed together led us here, where a lot of players just weren't playing interesting games. And that led to a not interesting season. But the two players that I think were playing interesting games amongst this like web of boringness did make it into the Final Four, and one of them won. So like, I still think that it was it wasn't awful. It could have been worse.
I agree with every single thing you said. I really do. I think Kyle and Camilla, I think the reason that they're maybe not getting the credit right off the bat overall from this Fire community that they should be, it's because everything we just talked about of the amount of weak players that were on post merge. Because when you go back and look at it, it does look like they were playing with a bunch of idiots compared to themselves. I don't mean that like to be that like to say it like a dick, but like they were. And it definitely a Kyle win feels like for the first time in a really long time in Survivor, a Kyle win also feels like a Camilla win. It feels like a team win, which is really nice. And I think Kyle could have did better at Final Tribal, relaying kind of what happened with his game. I think Camilla definitely helped him. Clearly, Camilla helped him back at Ponderosa. I think that's a whole different discussion about what goes on in Ponderosa these days pre-vote. We talked about it last year too, with basically their decision already being made before Tribal. Final Tribal definitely feels like it means less. It means more for second place now than it does for first, which kind of stinks because we've had some really, really good pitches and kind of like game-changing moments that have happened at Final Tribal before, and it feels like we really just don't get that anymore. Kyle and Camilla, every episode I talk about players I would love to see again. I feel confident we'd see Kyle again. I really hope we see Camilla again down the road. We'll see. If Survivor has another couple seasons like this, I don't know how long I'll be sticking around, honestly. I'm not a dedicated lifelonger like you guys are. I'm kind of like
not a freak.
I have stuck through the show through worse seasons than this.
I was about to say, I feel like you guys have seen the worst, so you're not as you wouldn't be as turned off as I am. Kyle and Camilla was a great win. I think the problem was that is the people that they played with post merge, and I think even when you throw Joe and even that again, they were very blind to the game going on around them. Kyle and Camilla deserve a lot of credit to that for the game they were playing. But I think when you look at the jury, when you have Chrissy, Cedric, Mitch, I'm going to even put Mary in here and Star. Yeah. I think a lot of those players are players that are going to be out like pre-swap in most other seasons. Maybe not Mary. So I think Mary
got voted off.
Mary would have been voted off. She didn't hit her, shot in the dark.
I think Mary dealt a very bad hand with the tribe she was on, but I can say the same exact thing for Say too. Even though I think Say caused a lot of that chaos. I think that Say Cedric tribe is easily one of the worst tribes I can think of in Modern Survivor in terms of like their overall game they played. And like we said earlier, I really wish Say was someone that sat on this jury because I think Say would have been way more interesting. The Final Tribal stinks. There's no way around it. I think the format stinks. There's really not too much interesting about it. I think the edit around a lot of it is dumb. Like I really don't care that they're revealing what jobs they have. We've talked about that before. That whole thing is so dumb. It's so stupid. Oh, I'm a lawyer. Oh, I'm getting a PhD. Like that's great. You can tell them that like at the bar after. Like me as a viewer who has known that for like 3 months, I don't care. And I don't like take that time to give another question that they would have gotten. Like I wanted Kyle to pitch more to explain his game more. I'm really happy Camilla did it because I actually thought Kyle's like first two answers were really bad. And then the ship started to get righted, but then also Joe, I think Joe clearly went into that Final Tribal thinking he had won. And I think he very, very quickly realized, A, I'm not ready to deal with this at Final Tribal, and B, someone else clearly played a better game, and I didn't even realize it until now. And then Eva at one point tried to cry her way out of it. There's no way around saying that. Whether she intentionally did it or not, she tried to cry her way out of it. And I hate that. You gotta be very, I feel like you have to tiptoe these days around what you say about like a player like Eva. Cause it like my people confuse attacking the player versus attacking the person. It's like two different things. I'm attacking the Survivor player. That's who I have the issue with.
Well, I think what you just mentioned about Joe to me is why I'm like not that like upset that he came in third instead of second, like because looking at their final travel performances, like Joe's was, I think Joe might have had one of the worst final travel performances of the new era. It was like completely awful. Like every answer he gave was like, to me, like either did nothing or lost him votes. He did not own his game at all. He clearly had no clue what the hell was going on for the entirety of the game, if not the tribal council itself. Like I'm shocked that he even got a single vote, because like, yeah, he accomplished, like his performance was really horrible. Whereas Eva's, I think, was decent. Like Eva, to me, I think gave good answers and like at least presented an argument. And I think, like, if it wasn't like, if it was like, Mitch there next to the two of them, does Mitch win against them? Maybe, but I think in that scenario, maybe Eva is able to like put together a more coherent argument against somebody that didn't have a game to like speak of that was undermining her. Because like obviously, like when Kyle started talking about his game, that really made Eva especially look kind of foolish. But I do think that like a lot of Eva's social game in particular was hidden from us and downplayed significantly because she is the loser here. And so I think that to me is indicative that like even with expecting Joe to be as bad as he was, I think I still overrated Joe, and I probably slightly underrated Eva as a player, both in general and in terms of their ability in Final Tribal.
I mean, I feel like Joe had some points he could have made. He just
no, he didn't. He didn't. It looked like he was actively trying to lose, which is like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he was or he like, it was awful. The like argument he had with Chrissy was like a very bad look. It was just like not. It was self-righteous. It was very like insulting. It almost felt like he was like spitting in the jurors' faces when they were like trying to get him to like grab the game.
I didn't mind his response to Chrissy, but only because I hate Chrissy. I think Chrissy, had no business being there at all. So I think that's part of it. And I got what he was saying overall. But on the flip side, one of the reasons Kyle won is because he realized, him and Camilla realized in a nice way, we're going to have to go against each other. And I think that's why Eva was a hindrance to Joe this season through his own fault. And I think that's why I think he's such an interesting player to see him come back again into play, because if he's able to kind of get into that cutthroat mindset of, Eva was my survivor daughter. I'll totally understand wanting to protect her in the game. You can't also be like, I want to win the game and do this. Because clearly that was not what was going to happen with the jury. And I'm glad that didn't happen, because even when the prospect got brought up of both him and Kyle wanting to throw themselves into fire just for the sake of Eva not having to struggle through that, even though it's a very human and it's a very real response, it is not a game player move and response. And we need more game players and cutthroat players. I think once again, you need to separate the player from the person when it comes to Survivor. And I think a lot of people, especially fans, have a really, really difficult time doing that. But I think the players have to start doing it a little bit more too. And I get it. You're on the island with this person for, 26 days, 39 days. It's very easy how you create like this unnatural bond with them than you would in the real world. But it's a game, man. And Kyle Camilla realized it. Kyle and Camilla were two game players. It's just it was a beautiful win. I wish the season and the players around them were better so we could highlight it. Because I when I think about it, I do like Kyle more than D, but I think that overall, I think D played with better players, and I think that's what ends up making D's win more impressive for me. I think the Rachel and Kyle conversation is more interesting because I think Rachel's end game, like final episode, was impressive, but everything that led up to that was lucky and so-so, whereas Kyle has been really impressive the entire time. So I think you have quickly talked me into it, even though I did most of the talking of Kyle being better than Rachel. So I'm going to put Kyle second now of New Era.
I mean, I put him first. I think that like I understand. I get the argument of like worse players versus better players. Like that's kind of like a dance that a lot of people do when it comes to like ranking winners. Where it's like, oh yeah, Kim Spradlin, but I mean the One World cast had a combined IQ of like 47. So like, is she really that great because she like curb stomped a bunch of morons? Like, it was an impressive game, but like look at the competition. Or like people will do that with obviously Boston Rob or Redemption Island. Similarly, I mean I don't think that like the 45 cast was like that much greater in quality than this cast. Like it's significant enough for like to like play a major role in me ranking them. Like like I mean Katora is in that final four. Like no shade on Katora. Like I like Katora as a character and a person, but like really horrific Shriver player. Like who are the like the amazing players on that season that are really challenging D? It's like Drew. Like is that it? Like, what are we looking at here?
I thought, I
get to reach like Kelly Nalbadian. How do you say her name? Like,
I do think that was a huge move, right? Because I think Kelly was probably in the best spot, was in a seemingly winner spot that season. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go repick all the way through that whole season. Yeah. I don't know. What's his name? Brian's guy, the Boston guy. I liked him. I think that you guys are Jake.
Jake had some good ideas, but he had no social pull.
Yeah, he had no. Yeah, yeah. That's why I also think I wish. I do wish it was almost a mandate to get winners from New Era back to verse potentially kind of like these older school. They don't even have to be winners. Kind of like the older school players and see how it goes. Because there's two mentalities, right? There's the mentality that the new era players are going to completely wash the old school players because of what they are used to compared to the old game. And then there's the thought that like the old school players are the true game players and they're cutthroat, and the new era players are not ready for that. I think that is much more interesting. I would love a new versus old school season where I guess it seems like we're sort of getting that coming up, but I would like a straight up like theme season, new era versus old school clashing. We're also obviously running out of time to do that between how old some of these players are getting, so it would have to happen soon. I'm of the opinion that if 50 is a major success, they're gonna the hype around it already is massive. That we're gonna get a few more returning player seasons pretty quickly. At least I hope, because I want to see.
I think part of the hype around 50 is just that like this is the biggest gap between returning player seasons the show has had in years. Yeah. I think ever, right? Like this is literally the lot. Like there's never been a 9-season run of no returning players in the history of the show. So I think that's like a big part of the hype. It's just that we haven't had returning players in 9 seasons. So
they have the characters of new era to fill an entire season. I think if you take every interesting character from every season, you have a very, very good cast of people to play. Obviously, you need a lot to fall right for that to happen. I think if you want to build the hype back around Survivor, you have to do that. I need to see D versus Kyle in some capacity. I think that would be really, really interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we'll get it in 8 or 10 years when they do Winners at War 2, but yeah, I mean, for me, just comparing them, I think it just comes down to D made a pretty heinous mistake at the final 5 that left her open to being eliminated if Jake and Katora had ended up being able to coordinate in any capacity. And Kyle never really made a mistake at that level. That I can think of. I don't think that Kyle really made any kind of major errors at all the entire season. I think he played a pretty clean game front to back.
No, and then I think the one thing you can say, and I don't want to have a whole D Kyle discussion. I think the one thing you can say about D though is that maybe her social game was so strong at that point that even that quote unquote fatal mistake was still, she put herself in a place that it wasn't. But then you get in
unforced error though. You could say that it was just unnecessary to take the risk. You could say oh yeah, she had Katora so locked in that her and Jake never would have gotten on the same page. But you can't 100% say that. Like, you know, it like taking the risk of making that split vote the way she did, like for literally no like viable reason. Like there's no strategic advantage that she gained from doing that. It's just, yeah, to me, just an unforced error that, like, even if it was only a 10% chance of her going in that round, like a 10% chance Jake and Couture get on the same page, that's still like she took a 10% chance of going home for no reason. Whereas I don't think Kyle ever made a mistake to that degree.
I agree. And I think that's why, like I said, I think that's why now more so, obviously this is the first time I've been fully live with Survivor. So I'm sure you guys have had other situations too, where it's like, I really want to see these players just clash to see if it was all bogus the first time or not. Like Erica from 41, for example, what is she like an all-time fluke winner, or is she like, we're finally going to see why she won 41 to begin with? Like that's what I want. As much as I'm excited to see somebody like Colby back, that's kind of almost what I want more at this point.
Yeah, I think the Michelle Fitzgerald kind of arc, right, where like a lot of people were very down on her Korong win, and there was like obviously the big Michelle versus Aubrey debate. And I was always somebody at the time who was like very much on the pro Michelle side and thought that her win was extremely underrated and appreciated. And I think her coming back on Winners at War and doing as well as she did was like kind of a vindication that you know she did have some game, and it wasn't fluke.
No, definitely. Gosh, I haven't jumped in a bit. I'm trying to.
Yeah, well, it's like hard because like I want to talk about the episode, but the episode was kind of fucking boring. So I'm trying to like talk about more, you know, interesting topics.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think one thing we wanted to bring up is that the Kyle Camilla are like the gamer version of Maria and
Charlie.
Yeah,
it's really bad that you're having trouble remembering his name when he's supposedly probably going to be on season 50.
Yeah, be more iconic and be, you know, someone I'll never forget. We'll see.
So I think Final Tribal for this episode was the highlight. I think everything we got from the show was like to talk about there. I think Eva thinking she won and then having the second Kyle vote read was pretty satisfying. I can see it's heartbreaking for her. That sucks, but as a Kyle guy, that was very nice to see. I disagree with you, Ben. I did get very nervous for a second. I thought that things are going to go south very, very quickly. So I was happy to see, obviously, Kyle win. Where I'm going with this, though, is that Eva mentioned Maria being an old woman and getting out there. And I thought that was great. And then this opened up a bunch of discourse on Twitter talking about how much Maria sucks and has kind of like doubled down on being kind of shitty after the game as well. So shout out Charlie. Looking forward to seeing him in 50. Charlie deserved a Camilla, and I hope that he finds it.
Maybe it's Camilla. Yeah.
Maybe it's Camilla. Let's see. Maybe it's Q. We'll see.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I think I'm on the Charlie and Genevieve train for an actual realistic kind of scenario.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, but we'll see.
Charlie tried to work with Q. Maybe we get more of that. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I think trying to work with Q is a fool's errand, but we'll see.
I think the prospect of having Q and Coach and potentially Andy, fingers crossed, that sticks. I think having those three in a discussion is one of my favorite things about 50. I think that's, if I get to see with Q, Coach, and Andy, I'll die happy.
Yeah, maybe they'll all go on a journey together.
Interesting story, you know.
Yep. Who knows? It's all possible. That's what I love about All-Star seasons. Is like, you know, let's throw all these random people together from the eras. It's usually fun.
Yeah. I'm actually interested to hear you guys' thoughts on something that I've been kind of pondering. I think that the second Camilla won Final Five immunity, she was the most likely winner of the season, and she kind of got very unlucky. I don't know if you guys have a take on that.
So it kind of goes into my overall thought of who was the stronger of Kyle and Camilla. And I think what we saw in the show and what the jury's perception of Camilla seemed like two totally different things, potentially, for them to say that. We don't know. I don't know. That's why the whole thing about them being able to talk to each other at Ponderosa, once they're voted out, like all that, I have no idea what Camilla sold to them in the game. I'm sure she sold them her game, which was very, very good. I personally, if I had all the facts and I was sitting there, I would have a hard time voting Camilla over Kyle personally. But like I said, they're a team. Like neither could have did it without one or the other. It's a team win for both of them. I think the way they made it sound though, like Camilla would cleanly sweep, was not the edit we got with the rest of them. Because it seemed like more Camilla's relationship with the rest of that jury was that they were all kind of like the bottom losers, or at least where Camilla was projecting like she was one of them. I think that's part of like my issue with the overall edit of the season 2 is that we were obviously sold and thought that Joe and Eva were this power dynamic for so long, and that like everybody acknowledged that they were such this huge threat and they had to get them out and nobody ever did it. But then at the end they're saying, Joe and Eva weren't the big threat. Like, I guess it depends on what Camilla sold to them back at Ponderosa. Like I said, I have a hard time picking Camilla over Kyle, but it's like if one won over the other, I would not be upset.
I think for me, Camilla wins because she would have the underdog like narrative on her, and then she'd be able to go to Final Tribal Council even against Kyle and be like, I actually have been in a great position this whole time, and I've been able to pass information between everybody and Kyle. Kyle's been passing information between the people I didn't have a good relationship with, and despite being on the outside of the majority alliance, I stuck around this whole time, and my game was way better than people thought it was. So I think that plus already probably having the underdog bump would put her over the top.
Yeah, I agree. I think Camilla was both the better player and played the harder game. And I agree that the reason that I think that she does win is because she is basically able to like puppeteer a lot of the back half of the season without actually getting any of the blood on her hands herself, which is like a very, very difficult thing to do. And so she's basically able to like use Kyle as an avatar for her game. And so Kyle is getting Kyle is running the game through this big alliance by puppeteering Joe and Eva, but all of those moves fundamentally are primarily benefiting Camilla more than Kyle. Like it is benefiting Kyle, but like it's like exponentially benefiting Camilla more. And so it's a very kind of like non-standard game where you have somebody who is not in the like outward majority group, but who is still able to control a lot of the votes simply by the mechanism of a relationship that nobody knows about. And it's like, I think honestly, the Kyle and Camilla relationship and the way that they played this should be kind of a blueprint for future players on how to effectively kind of run the middle of a season like this where there is like very strongly delineated alliances. And you kind of see this a lot in Big Brother. Like I think like the Kyle and Camilla strategy is like a very common Big Brother strategy, because in Big Brother there is like often a two-side of the house dynamic where there's like very strongly delineated, like this is the strong group and this is like the underdog bottom feeder group. And there is very frequently a situation where there is a pair, like a secret pair playing in the middle, like as in BB3, for instance, is like a big example of this. But you even see it a little bit with like James Ryan at BB6. Like there's like a lot of capable players who are able to make that work. And I don't think it's utilized as effectively on Survivor. Like you could look at like a Rob Sesternino in Survivor Amazon, where he tried to do this with Dina, but like he then ended up having to cut Dina. And then so he kind of started doing this a little bit with Matt towards the end of that game, where Matt was kind of like the underdog bottom feeder that he was like, using as a fulcrum to execute his strategy. It's like a very, very underrated but very difficult game to play.
Yeah, I mean, first O of Survivor of outplay, outlast is outwit, and I think that's what Camilla did from day one. We saw it with Charity, with her what was it? Charity, right? That was her name. We saw her immediately like be like, I just want to get everybody to hate Charity.
Dylan
At first,
forgot her name.
It's been a long season. Yeah, I agree. And it's the same, the exact same excuse I just said for D of her social game was strong enough to, even when she was vulnerable, she was able to get out of it. When the power five are trying to go after Camilla, Kyle talked her way out of it. And, it's points for both. It's points for Camilla for having her ally go to bat for her that much. And then it's a point for Kyle for going to bat for his ally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know. I think Camilla and Kyle deserve to win the season, hands down. I just I think it was very easy for them to be like, oh yeah, we're voting Camilla no matter what. And I didn't get the vibe from the jury either that they were like salty towards the people that were up there, especially towards the end. That whole David knock stuff was dumb. Love David though. Would love to see him play again. That whole thing, him being Sexy Squidward, the Mew God, that was great too. That was great entertainment. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I think we've highlighted really everything there is about this season. And overall, the episode, I think it was the more watchable of recent episodes we've gotten for Survivor of like the past like 3 or 4. I thought the finale overall was fine. It was like a pretty quick 3 hours for me. So that's a bonus. And like I said, I thought the final tribal was interesting and got like it was as interesting as the show had been for a couple weeks now. So that was a bonus there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Camilla comeback was pretty thrilling, very fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because at one point in that challenge, I was like, man, if I was in her position, I don't know if I'd be like even trying anymore. Like I'd probably just like very passively go through this, but shows why you shouldn't do that. Shows why you should just keep going. And she did great.
Yeah, I think that like it helps if you know that the puzzle at the end is the fire puzzle, which is like historically one of the more difficult Survivor puzzles, and you're with a group of people who like not grew up puzzles. I would say, like if you've kind of been paying attention for like much of the season, Joe, Mitch, even like Kyle, and even to a degree, not seemingly the best puzzle solvers, whereas Camilla has been like one of the strongest puzzle solvers of the season. I think it is easy to be like, just got to keep going, just got to get to the puzzle. The physical portion is just kind of like the thing that tires you out before you get to the puzzle, and the puzzle is the equalizer. Like we see that a lot on Survivor, where it's like the first 80% of the challenge doesn't matter, and as long as you're good at the last part, then you're good. So I think that does help, keep your spirits going in a situation like that. And then, I think the reason they do it is so they can have these types of comebacks, or like the cast comeback in Cagayan as another example of somebody struggling for the majority of the physical competition part, and then like get into the puzzle and just doing it in like 5 seconds and beating everyone.
Yeah, much like how the rest of the season has gone. I don't really know what much more to say about it. I really don't. I'm like trying to find words. I'm like surfing like the Survivor threads and stuff. But it's like more of the same of what we already have really said. I think if you do rewatch this now, I think a rewatch is way more obvious of the pure domination Kyle and Camilla had. And I do kind of wonder, like I said, I do wonder what our obsession with Joe and Eva was in terms of like how truly powerful they were in the game. I think it shows how great of a move getting Shaheen out was for Kyle and Camilla, especially obviously how it played out of this final tribal with them pulling the rug from Eva saying that was her like best move when really it was not her move at all. I think that that's truly when they were kneecapped. And we said as much last week too, obviously. It felt like we were watching their game just completely come to an end. So I guess on rewatch that will be interesting. No, just being like, oh yeah, it was over to begin with. You know, it was the second that we got the merge, Kyle and Camilla knew what they were doing. I don't know. I guess like I'm now the big thing will come out is what our obsession with how strong Joe and Eva was. Because in hindsight, Joe's social game was pretty bad outside of Eva. You know, he did a good job of keeping Shaheen and Kyle close, but like we said last week, Joe really made no effort to try to figure out what was going on with Shaheen and like gave him riddles like he was the Riddler to kind of get him to confess that he had an idol, which was probably the beginning of the end for Joe. I think that's not really the only other story, which we've pretty much have covered for the most part. It's just kind of like the complete implosion of Joe the last couple weeks. But like I said, we've been highlighting it the whole time. So nothing new from our end.
Yeah, exactly. We saw it coming. We're great at our jobs. Much smarter than most other podcasts, very clearly. It just felt like he was making some mistakes. And Ben brought up a really good point that he wasn't a huge fan of the show for like years and years. So it makes sense that he can make these types of mistakes versus Kyle and Camilla, who are like, you know, A tier, S tier, like first time players. Just like he wasn't ready for that, you know?
Yeah. I do think if we sued Joe on 50, which is like, you know, he's one of the names that we're seeing in the mix. I do think he comes into that season with, you know, like kind of having been like gut punched at the end here and given a little bit of a wake up call that like his way of playing Survivor. So a surprise, a huge surprise. Wow. Like, wow, this way of playing Survivor that has never worked through 25 years of the show also didn't work this time. Like, but you know, something that, you know, we were able to identify pretty early on in the season and continue throughout just because we're familiar with the history of the show that like Joe clearly wasn't aware of or like didn't care or were just like deluded enough to think that he was somehow different. But like I think having that specific gut punch of losing in this way to Kyle and like kind of being able to see Kyle and Camilla's game play out on TV will probably set him up much better for a second attempt.
Or it won't.
It might not, no, he might change nothing. He might try to do the same thing again and probably get voted out very quickly. Especially because they're filming, you know, next week, right after, you know, we've just had a huge heroic season of like Joe being the star, and Joe is like the flashing, you know, icon of like, here, vote me out. I'm the face of the franchise right now. So like a lot of egotistical Survivor players who come back again, you know, might take that as a challenge to get him out as soon as possible.
I think, and what I meant by that, maybe he won't though with Joe, is that you know, he talked about how Survivor was his sister's thing, not his. And I know that that's now his connection to it. I guess I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how we saw several times this season. I don't think winning was everything to Joe until maybe it was, and he realized he couldn't win it anymore. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of like, if he comes back and he's just still like nonchalant Joe, then that's fine. We've seen enough of Joe, and that's that. I think I think if he comes back with the fire, being like, oh yeah, this is how bad I messed up. I saw what I did wrong with my game. He seems like a smart guy. I think the game just got ahead of him. You know, we can change. I think that's really interesting. I think a guy like Colby would love Joe. I think Joe would love Colby. So that's a fun thing to watch.
I think it's a combination of that with him not really being like a dyed-in-the-wool fan of the show, combined with Eva being there and the relationship they formed so quickly, and him prioritizing that over playing optimally, which he called out. Like there was like a level of self-awareness to that, right, where he calls that out pretty early on in the season. That like, yeah, like I've made the decision that like this relationship that I've formed with Eva is more important to me than winning the game, and I'll prioritize that over winning the game. If even not being there on 50 with him, if that's the case, like I think that changes a lot of the calculus for him, and maybe he is more willing to play a harder game and a more selfish game.
Who knows though? Because 50 is blowing up. 50, I'm like reading text from my brother now. He's losing his mind. 50 is like completely shaken up from what we thought it was 2 days ago, which is
it's not uncommon.
I can't commit to these like awesome casts we're getting this close anymore, and it breaks my heart because that most recent one I loved. I think the notion that Andy dropped out that Amanda dropped out on her own will. And then now we have Davey replacing Andy. We'll see. We'll have this conversation next week. We'll see where we're at because I think that'll be a very, very interesting. Really, kind of the last thing go ahead, Brian.
I just want to say I do love the fact that putting together a real life Survivor cast sounds as chaotic as putting together an LRG cast was. Mm-hmm. There was one time the entire
recording player seasons.
Yeah. There's the one time the entire cast, except like a few people, dropped out the night before, and I scrambled and put a cast back together for the next day. So happy that goes to real Survivor as well.
Yeah.
No, really the only thing I want to highlight before we go is I've been like begging for players like Camilla and Kyle, 2 players that stick together in the shadows. We've said that's like a very effective method, obviously. We've been begging for that, so I was really happy to see that play out and be successful this season. That was very nice.
Yeah, dynamic duo, really fun. Glad that Kyle won, honestly. So I wanted Camilla to win, but if it couldn't be Camilla, I'm glad Kyle won.
Yep, same. I think I've been reserved, reserved to the fact that it was Kyle and not Camilla for long enough that like I'm content with it.
Yeah. And obviously like Camilla's definitely like more cut from a similar cloth of like us, like super fan, nerd, video game player. Like it was very much like, oh, like I know Camilla, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So. I think the other interesting aspect of this is if Kyle was the one to lose and Kyle went to Ponderosa, do we think he does the same pitching that Camilla did? I think that's another big part of this.
So, yeah.
I think so.
I think he would. I just don't know if he would have apparently the stranglehold on that jury that Camilla apparently did. It seems like Camilla did a lot of. I mean, that's what you want your ally to do. That's what Maria should have did for Charlie. You want your closest ally to go and pitch that for you. So I'm just really happy she did. That's what I guess the other flip side of that. What you asked earlier is if Camilla was there instead of Kyle, would she have a clear win? I think that's what was maybe the biggest thing Kyle had going for him into this, other than the fact that apparently everybody in the jury hated Joe and Eva, was that Camilla was there being his biggest supporter, which was another great part of that whole thing we talked about of just having really close allies sticking the whole way through.
Yeah.
So on to Survivor 49.
Not to be forgotten.
Yeah, we can't forget Survivor 49, even though this will be the last time we talk about it until next September. But what do you guys think of the Riz God in the preview?
I know
I'm seeing mixed opinions.
I did not watch the preview purposely.
There's a guy who calls himself the Riz God. Which
his name is Rizzo. Apparently, he's a live game player. I've seen people online saying like, yeah, I played in a live game with him, or I played in an org with him, or something. So like he's like from that zone of people.
Yeah.
Which I guess like good that he's like a fan. Like maybe the one thing we learned from like 48 is like, there is I guess a balance between people who like know the game and know the show and people who don't, that like needs to be struck a little bit better if we're going to have the game designed the way that it is. So I'm excited for him to like either crash and burn or be like a major player. I think those are pretty much the only two options.
I'm really excited for him to try to get Jeff to call him Riz God in the same way that, like Fabio's Fabio.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, yeah. I don't know. Is Jeff hip with the kids? Does he know what Riz God means? Like,
probably no way. But I think you gotta like catch Jeff on the right day, because I feel like there are days where Jeff will 100% go with it, and days where he'll slam you and like make fun of you for even daring to try to get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like a charisma check, like a D&D style charisma check with
ironically.
Jeff. Yeah.
We'll see if he lives up to his self-proclaimed nickname.
Yeah, see if he has the Riz to get called the Riz God.
Because I could definitely see a similar, remember Johnny Fairplay on Micronesia when he came out and was like dressed like Jeff and like trying to play, and Jeff just completely slammed him.
Yeah,
that was I can see that happening potentially to Riz God.
I mean, Fairplay is called Fairplay. Like, he got what he wanted.
A man got Jeff to call him War Dog, so anything's possible.
That's
We'll see.
War Dog, somebody who like a lot of people were like high on him potentially coming back right after that season ended, and then like I think a lot of people immediately forgot that he existed like a year later.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't hate seeing War Dog again, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, when Rick Devens is on the bubble, I don't think we're getting War Dog return.
That's insane, because I thought Rick Devens was number one with a bullet coming back for this season.
I've always said that Angelina is the number one with the bullet.
I mean, from Jeff's perspective.
Oh, from Jeff, yeah.
Jeff was going to be like, we're starting, the cast with Rick on it.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not going to push off 49. Survivor does have a strong history of the season before the returning player season often being better than the returning player season. I would say 39 being the one strong exception to that rule. Even though like I'm not the hugest Winners at War fan, still better than Island of the Idols. Yeah. And a lot of the times it's kind of like a hidden gem that gets forgotten, and like kind of people come back to it later and be like, oh wow, that season actually was way better than people thought at the time, because everyone was so hyped for the returning player season, they kind of ignored it.
Yeah, Pearl Islands, China. I rewatched Samoa last year.
Samoa is phenomenal.
It's good.
Yeah,
it was good. It's way too Russell heavy, obviously, but like the rest of it's good, and it feels like a very nice like transitional season from like normal Survivor to like the like big move era Survivor.
Philippines is the another
Philippines
one.
So much better than Caramoan.
Yeah.
It's not even close. I guess, but Caramoan came before Blood versus Water, so that goes out there. But I would say I preferred Second Chance. I preferred.
To me, Ko Rong was the season that got overlooked by Second Chance.
Yeah.
So I prefer Ko Rong to Cambodia personally, but I know Cambodia has a lot of fans. So I would say Millennials vs Gen X, while I think is overrated, is still better than Game Changers.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So I would say across the board for me, the season that gets overlooked by the returning player season is generally better.
I'm begging on my hands and knees for a season like Millennials versus Gen X at this point, though. So, I didn't know how good I had it.
Yep.
We'd love to see Michaela back. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
she beat on the phone.
Won the challenge recently. Did I hear
Did she
that
win?
right? It may have been a leak. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry if I just.
Well, sorry for challenge viewers who don't like spoilers, and we might have just spoiled.
We might not have. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
not
I don't know
plugged in.
either. I don't know either.
Someone literally could have just said it on Twitter, and I took it at face value.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, Michaela's great. Really great play. Well, really great character.
Really great character. Yeah, not that great of a player. Besides that, wrapping this season up, looking forward to 49 and 50. We are supposedly, assuming that like it's not some big charade, we are getting the Survivor 50 cast released to us by official press in 6 days from today, next Wednesday. It's I guess gonna be next Wednesday in the morning on like one of the like CBS morning shows, which I think is one of the worst ways to do this because people are either going to be like eating breakfast or like commuting to work or like at work. Like who's going to be like looking, watching this morning? I don't know, whatever. I don't care. I'll find out when it drops on social media or wherever. And we will be back next week at some point to do a special coverage podcast of the cast. We're going to go through the cast and do our first impressions. There are a number of leaks that have been out there for weeks and months now, but I think even right now the cast is not solid, even behind the scenes. So those leaks are not going to be 100% accurate. So we'll give our first look of a full official cast at some point, and then we're thinking about potentially doing more deep dives into each of the individual players as the summer goes during the off season, maybe like one at a time or two at a time or something like that, depending on how it shakes out.
Yeah, it's the year of Survivor, according to people. I don't know. So I saw someone say that. So
I mean, we have 50 filming, a lot of hype for that. Like, even though it's not airing until next year, technically, we have, AU versus the world in the fall with a lot of big names on that. So,
yeah, could get a Suri win.
Yeah, we could get a Suri double win. We could get Suri winning Australia versus the world and 50.
That would, I think Jeff would lose his mind. I think if Sheree won Australia and then goes back to that, and that's not officially her first win or something like that, he loses his mind.
I think she skyrockets to the GOAT immediately if she did that.
Mm-hmm.
She's so crazy. She's already in the conversation for best like social strategy player of all time. So
yeah. I mean, obviously, besides her, her trader appearance, and then obviously like Big Brother 25, her run on that season,
Mm-hmm.
she's definitely up in the upper echelons of social strategy game players.
Yeah, and speaking of Big Brother, it's about to start, Ben. We'll see how much we cover.
It's like a month and a half.
Well, there are previews already on commercials and all.
Yeah,
that.
weird ASMR previews, but the scenes that the ASMR previews are highlighting are very good scenes. Yes. A lot of like big blow-ups and fights and stuff like that. It seems like they're leaning into some of the drama aspect where Survivor has started leaning out of the drama aspect, outside of, I guess, 46 as a weird outlier example. Last season, BB26, one of the best seasons of Big Brother in years, in my opinion. We had a really strong winner. I would say arguably like a top 5 to 10 winner of the franchise. Really fun all the way through. So a big shoes for BB27 to fill.
Yeah, I can't wait. I've been getting like the hankering for it,
Mm-hmm.
the last few weeks. Like, could really go for some Big Brother right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Just wish the live feeds were up and I could be on there like talking about it with people online. But
yeah, the best background noise you could have for the live feed.
Yeah, the best. All right. Well, anything you want to plug, Dylan, before we get out of here?
No, keep listening to the show. We're going to be doing more, like Ben said. DJ Clubberlang on Twitter, X the Everything app, OnlyFans, Twitch, right? That's the other one, and TikTok. Yep. I'll find me on one of those more consistently, either OnlyFans or TikTok. Or I guess neither of those. Just subscribe.
Ben, as for you,
you just keep watching the Blindsiders. Brian and I will hopefully be back to cover Big Brother, as we talked about in the Have Not Room. I know last season, despite it being an incredible season, we were very bad at covering. Where this is like a history of this is like a history of the Have Not Room, where we like fail to cover the best seasons adequately, and we like always get like really locked in covering the bad seasons.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it works out like that.
It's almost sublime how, we skipped over Big Brother Canada 10, which is in my opinion one of the best seasons of reality TV in history. And we covered instead like a still decent but pretty, much worse season before that. And then we got stuck covering the Celebrity season 3, which made me want to video game myself. And we covered multiple really horrible seasons of Big Brother in a row. And then when we finally got an incredible season, BB26, we just stopped covering the show.
Yeah,
you're not really selling watching your coverage this year, because now I think the season's going to suck.
That's
Blindsiders is the podcast that we're most consistent with.
Yeah, well,
for reality TV, that's for sure.
I mean, that's just being a Big Brother fan, I would say. Yeah. Is like you have to go into Big Brother expecting to be disappointed, and then when you do end up with like a really good season, you're like, oh wow, this is actually incredible.
Yeah, that's the thing with it, is like when Big Brother's good, nothing better than Big Brother. It's just hard to get to that point of it being like that good. So
yeah, it's like 80% awful, but the 20% that's good is extremely good.
Keeps us coming back.
Yeah, it's like it's I would say it's like a drug in that way.
Yeah, definitely not healthy. That's for sure.
No, but like I said, BB Can 10. Like if you've never watched Big Brother Canada, BB Can 10, one of my favorite seasons of reality TV in my entire life. Top 5 seasons of reality TV in my opinion. So
that was the last one, right? It was BB 11 was the last one.
BB Can 12 they went through. Yeah. And then the show got canceled, unfortunately. Well, maybe fortunately, I would say.
Well, maybe one day it will come back. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like one of those shows. I mean, the UK canceled it at one point, and now it's back on. So if the UK can get rid of it, then I guess anyone can.
Yep.
Yeah, as for me, check out the main channel. We can get everything. Just put a video about everything happening with Marathon, the new game from Bungie, and how they're not impressing people with their betas and stealing people's artwork and using it in the betas, I guess alphas rather. And so go check that one out. Wicked Good Sports. I've pulled back a lot because football isn't really happening right now. And people are busy and can't join me to cover the other sports that I'm not really an expert on. And then, those fake nerds, nerd and pop culture news. And this is Better Radio. Tamora and I have been covering The Last of Us all season. Get the finale on Sunday, so that'll be good. And excited to talk Survivor 50. Always really fun to have an all-star season. And like Ben said, longest drought for returning players ever. So I'm extra excited now. So other than that, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.